Hi, I'm Daniel Sevelt, and welcome to Magic Land's Big Dark Room. Today we have Nick Minieri from Zakim Recordings and the Beantown Boogie Down blog. And he's going to get into the chair and he's going to talk to us about, well, he's going to talk about a lot of stuff, so let's just get to it, huh? Hello, Nick Minieri.
Dan.
Hello, Nick Minieri.
How are you, Dan? Good to see you, my friend.
Doing well. Doing well. Daniel, by the way.
Yeah, Daniel. Oh, good catch.
How has the pandemic been treating you and your family? You
It's
don't mind me asking.
Oh, not at all. I mean, I'm mostly hibernating right now, as I have been, within the last year. I live in downtown Boston, so I'm around a lot of people a lot, so I've got to kind of play it safe.
Yep.
Not just for my own good, but for everybody else's as well. So, no events for me. It's nice to see there's a couple of things going on, even Phoenix Landing, kind of to a limited capacity. But it's good for me because I'm working on a lot of music. I'm happy to be employed still. My work, it's steady, which is good, but I'm finishing up a lot of music. I'm working on a lot of just projects kind of quietly in the background myself, delving into a little bit of 3D modeling, Blender, been doing a lot of After Effects stuff, like just trying to teach myself as many things as I'm able to while I have the time, And my family's good too. My brother just had his first kid, so I became an uncle.
Oh, cool.
Back,
Congratulations.
last summer, which is good. I wish I could go down and see them a little more, but they live in New York, so it's even harder to get down there. But, we're doing the best we can with it, just like everybody else, just kind of adapting as things go along,
What are you working on for music?
I'm working on a lot of house right now, a lot of melodic house, a lot of, a little bit of lo-fi, couple drum and bass things in the background, organizing my sample library, which is a never-ending project.
Oh, that never ends.
It never.
It's like
never
organizing
ends.
your vinyl.
Never ends. So yeah, exactly. Haven't been doing a lot of vinyl collecting because crate digging, I'm a little, just with the whole pandemic, just going out and touching things that a lot of
you haven't been digging. You haven't been digging unless your fingernails are dirty.
Yeah, it's kind of tough. I do try to go to Cheapo just to support them every once in a while, and a couple of other local Boston places.
Yeah.
But I'm in and out in 10 minutes, and I've got the hand sanitizer on me at all times. So it's, haven't been doing a lot of DJing. It's been kind of back burner, just more organizing sample library, upping my sound design chops, finishing tracks, kind of stockpiling, reaching out to labels here and there. Not as much as I used to, but more just kind of building a backlog, and then when things get back to normal again, testing things out, when I start playing out again, and maybe shopping things around to some labels, seeing how they react.
So the house music you got going now, you have different labels that you're servicing in mind?
Exactly. I've been working with a few different labels. Like I just had a release that came out on a compilation last week on Misplaced, which is a British label, and they're doing pretty good. Like they have the guy who runs the label, he's pretty active in a lot of the Facebook groups I'm in, and he's able to sell a couple hundred copies on Bandcamp of each of his releases, each of his compilations. As I shop things around to labels, I'm trying to be realistic with assessing my skill level and how good I actually am. It's you don't want to sell things to a label that's just getting off the ground that's not going to give me any plays, but I'm not at the skill level where I'm ready to send stuff to Shall Not Fade or Dirty Bird or Strictly Rhythm. You know what I mean? It's just trying to assess labels that kind of match my vibe, that have a little bit of an audience that I can kind of tap into, and then we kind of work together where I use my network to help them grow and they can help me grow, and kind of at or above what my current skill level is. Those are the labels I try to reach out to, being realistic about it at the same time. There's this guy, actually, Knowlton Walsh, one of your past guests. Him and I have released some stuff on The Seed, which is a local label based out of New York that Bill Kramer and Josh Holiday run. And I use them for more of my acid house stuff. And then I do some UK garage on a label that's called Too Tough For You, based out of the UK. And the guy who runs that is Carl Tough Enough Brown, who was part of Tough Jam, who were like legendary garage producers from like the 90s. Like they did a lot of stuff with like Todd Edwards back in the day and some real heavy hitters, you know, kind of in the UK garage scene. So he does these compilations called Groove School that he's put some stuff out on.
You got any passion project going on? I mean, with all this time on our hands, you know?
Do a little bit of baking. You know, I do some cooking around the house a little bit, kind of doing, you know, making pies and bread and stuff like that. I haven't gotten into the sourdough fad or any of that stuff, but I've made bagels, you know, I've made like blackberry pie, you know, stuff that I never would have thought of doing, you know, when when the chaos of everything else going on, when things are normal, right?
I made a key lime pie.
Oh, I've done key lime.
Coq au vin.
What's that?
Chicken with wine. It's a French dish.
No kidding.
Yeah, I cooked it like 9 times or so, and I was like practicing and getting good with it.
Yeah. You know, going back on your baking thing, you know, it takes a couple of tries. Like your oven is always has quirks.
Oh,
and mine, like I have a gas oven, so it heats up a lot slower. So when I cook bread, it takes me, like if I do like banana bread, it takes like 20 minutes longer than like the recipe calls for.
Yep.
You know, so it's a little bit of trial and error, but same thing with like producing music. Like when I cook, when I screw something up once, I never screw it up again. You know, after you make the mistake, it's like, okay, now I know how to do this for the next time. You know, and it's just kind of it's a learning process like anything else.
Talk about learning processes. You were talking about Spotify, and there's a learning process, right?
It changes every day. You know, online promotion, online marketing, such a rabbit hole. And the thing that I've learned with like my music is like, if I'm gonna spend 20 or 30 hours working on a song, I'm not just gonna throw it out there into the internet and not put any effort into promoting it. Because if you look at how much music is out there, I read something like the average number of listens on a Spotify track is less than 10. And you look at all the songs in the world that, and I can't back that up, but if somebody wants to verify it, you know, I'd be, you know, there could be like a subjective comment, but most songs have less than, 100 plays. And if you're online and you see the way most people don't put any effort into promoting their work, and now there's something like 50,000 new songs that come out every day. Every day. Across all genres. 50,000. And even years ago when they said on the iTunes store, this is like from 10 years ago, they said something along the lines of 75% of music on the iTunes store sells 1 copy or 0 copies. So the vast majority of music never even saw a sale 10 years ago. Now most songs don't even get 10 listens, let alone somebody paying $1 to buy the song. You know, so it's like, I'm gonna put the effort in to doing like everything I can to try to get plays, but without being a pain in the ass online, telling everybody on my social media network. I think it devalues the music, and you have to find a way to make it engaging. And what Spotify does is they have playlists. Now they have editorial playlists that you could submit your song to get on editorial playlist. You have a better chance of winning the lottery than getting on an editorial playlist, unless you're like, you know, Peggy Gao or somebody at the very top of the totem pole who, you know, is in Resident Advisor, is in Fact Mag, is being talked about like on every single blog, every single, you know, and is playing around the world. If you're just local Joe Schmo DJ, which I still am, it's like you have to find other avenues of doing it without being annoying online. So what I do is there's a couple things I do in the background. One of them is Submit Hub. Now, are you familiar with Submit Hub? Have you used it at all? So what you do on Submit Hub is you can pitch your song to different people, either bloggers, or Spotify playlisters, YouTube promo people, you know, who can help premiere your song as well before it even comes out. Whether it's a self-release or if it's coming out on a label. So what I do is when I want to promote something, I have specific goals in mind with with what I want to do. And I focus mostly on playlisting on Spotify because I have assessed that that's where most of my audience is going to listen to stuff. People aren't on SoundCloud anymore. And I've got to try to promote stuff outside of like my friends.
Yeah.
So the way it works is if you get on, so there's editorial playlists, then there's user curated playlists. Those are the ones where you have the most chance of getting on. Now, user curated playlists, a lot of them don't have their contact information available, because if they did, they'd get bombarded with hundreds of promos every single day, and they don't want to deal with that. So the ones who make themselves available generally use Submit Hub. What Submit Hub is you could pay a small amount, like $1, to have an actual person who runs a Spotify playlist review your track. You're not paying for them to put your track on their playlist. You're paying for their time, because they get hundreds of submissions a day, just like anybody else would.
Sure.
If they reject your track, they're at least going to give you constructive feedback on why they rejected your track, which is good if you can take the heat. So I've developed thick skin. So like I usually take what they say to heart, and it helps better my music.
I was gonna say, get out of this job if you don't have one.
Yeah, and a lot of people can't stomach it, because when you send something to a label, they're not gonna tell you what the problems are. They're just gonna ignore your email and not follow up. So like when somebody when you send stuff to your friends, they're gonna tell you what you want to hear.
Yep.
You know, and if they don't if they don't like the track, they're just gonna say cool and just never listen to it again. You know, so this is a way where you can get real proper feedback, but you have to take the time to submit your track to the right playlisters. Like some playlisters will say, this is a deep house channel, and then you go and you listen to the tracks and it's like Medusa, Martin Garrix, Taseki, like EDM people. Or it's like stuff that's like John Summit, or stuff that's way out of my league in terms of like radio friendliness, in terms of like mix downs, like people who are on Defected Records, who are on Dirty Bird, who are at the absolute top of the totem pole in terms of skill level. I'm nowhere even close to that. And my music is nowhere palatable enough to appeal to, you know, an audience who wants to hear vocals all the time. Like I'm still using splice vocals on my stuff. You know, and that's not really what I want to do either. I just want to make melodic stuff that DJs want to play, you know, that's mostly instrumental.
Right.
So I find the playlisters I want to submit to,
but the vocals
I might get like 2 out of 10 accepts, approvals, but that's like still above average.
But don't the vocals on Spotify sell better than melodic tracks?
In general, they do on the bigger playlists, but I'm just trying to go to the playlists that kind of meet my vibe, similar to the way I pitch my tracks to labels. And then what happens is if you get your track approved on a few different playlists, then there's a multiplier effect that happens where your track will algorithmically start to show up more in people's feeds as more people are engaging with it.
Sure.
And that's how you trip the Spotify algorithm to get your stuff out there. Now my goal is like, I'm keeping it realistic. I would, you know, if I can get 500 to 1,000 plays on a track, you know, over 6 months, to me that's successful. Because if I didn't take those, even just the 5 or 6 hours over the course of a couple weeks to promote my track that way, it's just gonna sit there and it's gonna have 5 plays and nothing's ever gonna happen. And I've had it happen where I've put releases out, self-releases that nobody liked, and it's fine, you know, it's a learning experience. I did last summer, I put out this ambient project that I was working on back in the spring, and I tried to do it as a fundraiser to raise money for, it was kind of Black Lives Matter oriented fundraiser, and instead of George Floyd, I did it with this guy David McTevitt, who ran a barbecue restaurant, and he was just doing a fundraiser and a big barbecue during one of the protests for Breonna Taylor, which was about a week after the George Floyd incident happened. And what happened was there was a fight that broke out, and police tried to clear up the protest, which was right outside David McTevitt's barbecue shop, and police fired on people to disperse the crowd, and David was struck by a stray bullet and died. So I made the fundraiser for David McTevitt for his memorial, and the message I wanted to send was to show people that, you know, outside of George Floyd and Breonna Taylor, there were other people of police brutality, other black people as well, and I wanted to just spread awareness that there were other families out there, you know, who were suffering from it, who were casualties. So I raised $200 for it. It was very successful in that regard. but nobody liked the music.
Right.
The other side of this is when I tried to get the songs playlisted, like after I had finished the fundraiser and after the Bandcamp, after that was a success, I set the track up for distribution on CD Baby and tried to get the music out there, tried to pitch it to playlisters on Submit Hub, on SoundPlate, tried to line up a couple of premieres on YouTube. Nobody liked any of the songs. And you know what? It's fine. It's a learning experience. You know, like I kind of need that feedback. And because it was a self-release.
And you need people to tell you straight, you know?
Yeah, like, you know, I'll put it up on, you know, Facebook and it gets 100 likes and that's great. But, you know, those are my friends, you know, supporting me. You know, I need to see how this stuff does in the real world. So I couldn't get it playlisted anywhere on Spotify. It wasn't added to a single playlist. So all the 7 tracks after the end of this year, after it'd been online for 6 or 7 months, none of the tracks passed 15 plays.
Ouch.
Not a single one.
Yeah.
So I just took it out of distribution. I just quietly removed it.
Sure.
Because I don't want songs that I'm embarrassed about, you know, 10 years from now, kind of polluting like my back catalog.
Yeah, I get it.
Which is why I've started to lean towards sending stuff to labels instead of self-releasing it. Because for me, I prefer to have a second opinion. I need somebody to say like, hey, you know, like this song is good, but it has potential, but it needs a lot of work in these areas.
Yeah.
You know, and I'm gonna pass on it now, but I think you should improve these things and try to send it to some different labels. Like that's the feedback that is, to me, is golden.
Right.
Now other people may say, well, F you, I'm just gonna self-release it instead. They can do that, self-release it, and then it's gonna tank. I've gone down that path before and it's always led to failure.
Hey, the way I look at it is you have passion and you have zeitgeist, and sometimes zeitgeist and passion
it's like
match up,
it's a hard line, and I respect artists who go their own way and they build their own following that way, and they're not, you know, it's fine.
I have nonstop respect for the I have nonstop respect for the passion.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But as far as the production of it or how valuable this product is going to be, you have to tell people straight up. It's like, this is a great piece of work. No one fucking cares. This is a great piece of work that shows off exactly what your art wanted to do, and you really nailed it. Yeah. But the zeitgeist is where everybody's hanging out, and that's where your money is. So pick one.
Well, and then going back to saying earlier that 50,000 songs come out every single day. I just don't want to be part of that noise pollution. I want to if I can put a song out that even 500 people listen to, that I'm happy with. If I can get it on even like 8 or 10, you know, so I had a release that came out last week on Misplaced. Okay. So I did a Submit Hub pitch and I got it on like 4 out of the 9 playlists I submitted it to, which is probably like my best success I've ever had on Submit Hub. So, and it wasn't even one of my best. It's a track I'm still happy with, but it's not like, you know, it's not like Moody Man, you know, or, you know, it's, again, you know, having that self-awareness of how good your stuff actually is. Like, you know, this ain't Theo Parrish here, you know, like I'm still a nobody, but I'm happy that like people like, you know, and a couple of people emailed me and said, you know, the song is really good. You know, I really like it a lot. And, you know, and if I'm able to get it, you know, up to 500, 1,000, even 2,000 plays on Spotify over the next 6 months, to me, that's a success. And when I say success, I'm not looking for a Beatport Top 100. Success for me is just one-upping the ante of where I was a year ago. You know, if I'm getting more plays, if my songwriting improves, if my mix down improves, those are the things that I look at as success. And if I'm still having fun, then that's successful too. You know.
Talking about fun, can we talk about your new Spotify playlist?
For sure. So I've been running, you know, a playlist myself. It's called Low Pass Party, and so what I do is I have like I curate like different kinds of house, like melodic house, a little bit of lo-fi, a little bit of UK garage, and a little bit of down-tempo, like beatmaker type stuff too, which has been really big in the last couple years. And what I want to do is, like, when I used to be a blogger back in the day, which I'm happy to talk about a little later as well.
That's on my list.
Blogging,
we're gonna get there.
Nobody reads blogs anymore, other than like Resident Advisor and like the very, very top, you know, top of the pack type things. So, you know, I'm always trying to figure out a way to reinvent myself because I want to be able to help promote other people's work too.
Where do you think those consumers went of that media?
Facebook, Instagram, SoundCloud, Spotify, just social. People just want to hear songs that other people are hearing. They don't want to read like 10 paragraphs about the song. They just want to hear the song. If people are talking about it, they just want to get it. So when I used to blog, I'd spend all this time writing about a song that maybe 20 people would listen to, and then even 10 people would read it, you know? So it was like, why don't I just show people what songs I like rather than talking about it? Because talking about music, it's like, unless you're really, really good at it, which I didn't think I was, it's not really elevating, you know, the promotion of a song very much. It's not really doing much of a service to even the people I'm writing about. But a Spotify playlist that like I can get hundreds or maybe even thousands of people to follow, that will have more of a direct impact on people. And
more people listening to your tracks. Yes.
Yeah, exactly. So, and first off, you know, I don't want to use my playlist as a way, you know, I always put like one of my tracks on my playlist. I don't want it to be as an avenue just for me to promote, you know, my own stuff. That's nice, but like my whole thing with running the playlist is just having it be a space for songs that I respect. And eventually, you know, I'd like to become a Submit Hub curator as well, because it is a good means of, you know, a little bit of passive income on the side. Yeah. But I don't want it, you know, I'm not like a person who's gonna, you know, take like hundreds and thousands of dollars for. And this is like one of the things I've been learning about being a Spotify curator is people are reaching out to me asking what I charge, you know, to be, and I'm learning a little bit about the ecosystem of how Spotify playlisting works, which I wasn't even aware of. And I would tell these people like, you know, I don't charge anything. And then they would follow up with like, what do you charge? And I was like, I just said like, I don't really charge yet. And it's interesting because I only have about 350 followers on my playlist right now. A lot of that's come over the last like 3 or 4 months, to be honest with you. But what I'm finding out is like I'm getting anywhere from 5 to 10 submissions a day just on a playlist that has 350 followers. If you look at the playlisters that have 10,000 or 100,000 followers, it's like, holy shit. If I'm getting 5 to 10 submissions a day and I hardly have anything, what do you think these people are getting? So this Daniel ties it back to the conversation we were just having about Submit Hub, is I can kind of empathize with the curators now, because these curators who are having tons and tons of people sending them stuff, I'm now going through tons and tons of stuff myself.
And just answering the question is a ton of time.
Yeah.
You know, just writing out an email that's thoughtful at the smallest amount. If you multiply that times 20, it's just like, okay, so I'm going to spend half the day writing email.
Yeah. So if anything, it's still frustrating getting the negative feedback, but now I kind of see both sides of the coin. And a lot of what I get is stuff that's so far off the mark. Like, you know, so again, I'm doing a lo-fi house, garage, you know, melodic house, deep house, and I'm getting people sending me like Mumford & Son clone indie pop, you know, Ariel Pink wannabe type stuff.
Wow.
You know, and it's like just stuff that, or like, you know, I get a lot of hip hop, you know, I get a lot of like gangster rap. I'd say maybe like 20 to 30% is like, sometimes I get house that just like isn't quite there yet.
Wait. So I think we're misleading our viewers here. What is the genre of your playlist? What are the genres? Like, what's the master plan there?
Like as I said, like a little bit of lo-fi house. It's got emphasis on melodics because I really like, you know, diminished chord melodies. I like, you know, like minor key melodies. There's a certain kind of color in the sound that I really like. You know, like I don't go really.
It's got the Nick Minieri sound.
I'm not into like major keys. I'm not into, you know, diatonic predictable chord progressions. I like, you know, some color in the sound, if you will, like expensive chords. Yeah. So if there's like a little bit of that, and some of that comes from even like just sampling, you know, jazz and, you know, in an unpredictable way.
The only place you're going to be fine like ninths and 13ths.
Yeah, exactly. Like kind of jazz tones, you know, your ninths, your sevenths, stuff like that. And you know, so it's like I'm not a music theory guru, so the, you know, the language isn't quite as colorful, no pun intended, as I'd like it to be. But like I do have a sound that I go for, and if it's very major key or if it's very like pop friendly, I kind of like shy away from that. And some of the house that I get is just kind of like that. Or if it's like, I'll get some stuff that sounds like you could tell they're trying to get signed on Dirty Bird. You know, it's got that Chris Lake, you know, or the Fisher kind of clone sound, if you will. You know, so it's like there is kind of a style that I'm gravitating towards. You know, sample heavy stuff that's got grit. You know, like, you know, if it's gone through the Akai S950 or it's got that kind of DJ Premier sort of like dust and funk to it. I love that. I love that kind of stuff. You know, kind of flipped in a modern sort of way.
Well, I hope I don't bring up too many bad memories if you don't want to talk about it.
I don't have too many bad memories.
You don't? Good.
Yeah,
so what the fuck happened to Beantown Boogie Down?
So in my blogging days, like in a nutshell, between like 2013 to 2015, and this will tie back on what you were talking about earlier. Yeah. People just stopped reading blogs. Like with social media becoming so ubiquitous, people were finding their music, you know, just online, you know, just on social media by going to Facebook and seeing recommendations there. And then the algorithm didn't come until afterwards. But, you know, I was big on my Google Analytics, and I lost 90% of my traffic on Beantown Boogie Down between 2013 and the beginning of 2015. So between like 2012, 2013, I was getting over 1,000 people a day. Wow. And I was thinking, this growth is amazing. You know, I can keep sustaining this. Now, Beantown Boogie Down was hosted by GoDaddy, and I was running it on the Squarespace platform. Okay. And I was running it on an antiquated version of Squarespace from like 2007. And I had so much content on it, and so many like widgets and so much other HTML shit like wrapped around it that like it would have been impossible to upgrade without needing to like pay an admin thousands of dollars to clean up basically the mess I made, because I'm not like a web expert. You know, I was kind of learning, and that's why I started Beantown Boogie Down.
Well, I saw that collage look on the ZakimRecords.com, your record label, which I don't think we've said the name at all.
Yeah.
Your record label is
we'll get into that. We can get into that in a little bit, but basically, like what I did was it had an old version of Squarespace, and it was nowhere near as flexible as WordPress. And as things were getting more mobile friendly, in 2013, 2014, I kept it on an old platform which wasn't mobile friendly, and I lost 90% of my traffic overnight. My theory is I think Google penalized me, because I was running it on a platform that was no longer mobile friendly. And what ended up happening was I lost motivation, you know, between 2014 and 2015. Like I was still running the blog like constantly writing, constantly like, you know, and I was getting bombarded with stuff, you know, from local people, getting coverage, and I tried to get it all in. And there were a multitude of problems that I was having. First of all, I was getting overwhelmed with like requests, and I had a hard time saying no, because if I ever said no to people, they would like unfriend me. They would like just stop talking to me entirely. Sure. You know, and it was like and part of me was like I had a hard time dealing with that, like mentally. Yeah. And on top, because I wanted to kind of support, but because I talked about everything, the quality control of what I was talking about was declining a little bit. Okay. And instead of being a curator, which I was doing, you know, in the first year or two when I started the blog before it got a really big following, I was going out and finding my own stuff and talking about it. By 2013, 2014, all I was doing was just posting the stuff that people were sending me locally. Yeah. So the quality, and not that like Boston, you know, was devoid of quality. There was a lot of good stuff that I was writing about, the stuff that like John Barrera, Dr. Jeep, you know, Ali Berger, those guys were doing, and it was great. But quality control dropped, my Google AdSense dropped, and then I was getting into music production. And what I found was, as I was writing about music, I was like, I would just rather be making music, man. Like, I just didn't enjoy, it felt like I was sitting on the sidelines, you know, watching these people putting their releases out and having fun with it. And I was like, man, I just want to make music. I don't want to write about it anymore. You know, and I wanted to have a way to help people, you know, promote their stuff, but I just wanted to like do for me for a little bit. Yeah. So after I lost all the traffic, and after like things went the social media way where people were just finding their stuff, you know, online and not on blogs anymore, I decided to keep the blog online. Like I was going to continue to pay the Squarespace bill and continue to have a way to keep it hosted, because I have an archive of photos and stuff like that, you know, I thought at the time that people were using, even though nobody was going to the site anymore, you know. Right. So fast forward a couple years to November of 2019.
Okay. That's a leap.
So actually, no. One other thing too. Another reason why I stopped blogging is I started getting malware problems because I was running such an old version of Squarespace. That,
no.
Yeah, it was like I had to upgrade. If I wanted to continue to do stuff because there were like security holes and other things. And again, if I upgraded to the new mobile-friendly version, the whole site would be completely broken. I'd lose a lot of old links, a lot of old content. So I was like, fuck it. I'm just going to keep it on the 2007 version of Squarespace, the non-mobile friendly version. So let's fast forward from 2016 to November of 2019.
Yeah.
So there I was. I'm at Shaw's. Excuse me, I'm at Star Market. So I'm over there. I bought like maybe like a 6-pack of beer or something like that. Something completely like inconsequential. I go over, I check out. Lo and behold, the security guy comes over because there's problems with my checkout. I pay with cash. I had like $20 with me. I pay with cash. I check out. Then I get a note from my bank, like a text message from Bank of America, saying that my checking account has been suspended due to a security breach at the place that you tried to use your debit card. And the bank, for security measures, shut down my entire checking account, and I had to go to bankofamerica.com. I had to sign up to get a replacement ATM card. I had to do all this stuff, and until I did, my entire account was completely locked down. So it was like a 2 or 3 day ordeal, and then, they unlocked my account in temporary, but I needed a new debit card.
Okay.
So they sent me the new debit card, and I went through and I had to go through the painstaking effort of updating my debit information on every single thing that I do. Going back to Beantown Boogie Down. Beantown Boogie Down was hosted on GoDaddy through Squarespace. GoDaddy, my account basically has to renew in January. So in January of 2020, my account on GoDaddy expired, and I needed to update my debit information. GoDaddy didn't send me any emails telling me this. You're supposed to know to update your debit information on there. And because I really have to have my ATM card replaced, I didn't even think about it. It didn't even cross my mind. I just set it to auto bill and forget about it. So after GoDaddy, basically after my billing cycle ended and I didn't renew my information with them, I no longer own the domain to Beantown Boogie Down. So the Squarespace billing trickled a domino effect where the Squarespace auto billing stopped too. They deleted everything on Beantown Boogie Down that was on the Squarespace server. Everything was wiped out, and the domain name to beantownboogiedown.com was sold within hours to somebody who basically turned it into a replica watch site. And so the blog, if you go to beantownboogiedown.com now, it has like the framework of what my blog used to be without the template. And they embedded like replica watch links on it because they were basically buying the traffic that my blog had, which was very little at the time. And to add insult to the injury, I didn't even realize all this had happened for about 4 or 5 months. I think I went to go to the blog just out of curiosity for something, and I saw that the whole template had changed, and I was like, wait a minute, why are all these replica watch links in on it? And then I go to sign into my Squarespace, and they said, like, your account with us has been terminated due to GoDaddy's GoDaddy's contract that you signed with us in 2019 or 2009.
Right, 2009. Yeah. Thanks, guys.
And honestly, like at the time, I was so removed from it because I had so many other like things on the stove at the time, and because it was in the pandemic, and like, my DJ production blog was kind of lower. My biggest priority was staying safe and making sure I still had a job. This stuff was much higher priority to me last year than all the superficial music stuff, which I love, but it's not like life or death stuff. Right. So unfortunately it no longer exists. And I built a small WordPress blog for my label too, for Zakim at the time. And I realized that to run a label properly, it's a full-time job, because I feel like I like to promote other artists, but I feel like I'm doing these artists a disservice if I just put their hard work out into the internet and I don't spend the money to promote things. Right. And most of what I've learned with promotion, which I've talked about earlier, I've learned since after Zakim, since my own stakes are on the line.
When did Zakim open?
I started it in 2013.
Okay.
I was kind of like romanticizing the whole, like, you ever hear people talk about, oh, in Chicago in the 80s on Traxxx Records, we used to sell our records out of the trunk of a car. I kind of romanticized that vibe. And as like the whole vinyl resurgence and it's kind of like the old school house resurgence kind of started back in like 2011, really like Bicep kind of pioneered a lot of that whole like old school, you know, back to vinyl, you know, old school house was kind of coming back in, kind of taking the place of like the Solomon type tech house. You know, this old school type house was getting back into, you know, back into vogue again. So like I kind of really liked that movement a lot, and I was like gravitating towards it. So I just wanted to do kind of like a For Us Bias type thing that was a record label for Boston, press 100 copies, and really I was going to freaking Good Life and just selling them, you know, at Good Life. You know, where like I'd link up with people like around Boston and I'd drop the records off to them, and then, you know, it was great. Like, and it was like reaching out to different artists that I wanted to help out, and a lot of the artists that I thought were good fits for the label all moved away from Boston, you know, between the mid 2010s as like the scene kind of started to slow down. I noticed, and there was a lot of good, you know, there's a lot of good artists in Boston, but a lot of them weren't really good fits for the label, myself included.
Well, what's your label focus on now?
So the label, if
you're not able to get on it, I mean.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. It's like, you know, I wanted to kind of do like a house techno kind of thing to, you know, to kind of a For Us Bias thing for Boston. But as I was getting into my own, you know, music and really excited about that, the energy level for Zakim just wasn't quite there. But as opposed to like my old blog, it's not something that like is like over. I just think it's something that's kind of more dormant right now. I'd love to do a label again in some kind of sorts, maybe down the road. But kind of like the Spotify playlist and the potential, which I call my play. And I kind of want it to kind of reflect that sort of that lo-fi, kind of like basement sort of aesthetic, you know, very, very organic, you know, dust and grooves kind of sound. And I'm kind of thinking of like different channels that I could bring Low Pass Party into. A label or even a vinyl or cassette label could be a possibility. Maybe doing a YouTube promo channel to help with premieres, that could be another possibility. I don't want to keep it vinyl only though. Like, I think now if you're ignoring digital, you're setting yourself up for failure.
Well, you're setting yourself up for an enormously boutique product.
Yeah, unless you're Bicep or somebody that like Resident Advisor fawns over. You're not going to be, I mean, there's a lot of...
You're not going to get the exposure to get any traction.
There's a lot of like very well-known, like, not even like at Bicep level, there's a lot of well-known, you know, all vinyl labels. Like, let's say one like Peaky Beats, for example. They're doing a lot of UK garage stuff right now. And like, they're able to sell like 300 or 400 copy pressings, just vinyl only, no digital. But as somebody like me, you know, a virtual nobody from Boston, I can't pull that aesthetic off unless I have a few tracks that just completely blow up, and then I make a name for myself that way. You know, so that could be like a possibility, you know, doing a vinyl only thing down the road. But like, I think for now, if I were to do a label again, my strategy would be, you know, you'd have to have some digital component to it. MP3s, Spotify, YouTube. But it's like, you know, a lot of this stuff is a learning process, and I'm here to learn, just like everybody else, you know.
Fair enough.
I might be 41, but I'm still learning new stuff every day, you know, and I'm going to continue as things start to change and evolve, you know.
Well, learning feels good. I wish people got a headache when they, you know, the only way to cure it was reading a book.
I could sit and be jaded and talk about how like, oh, people don't play vinyl anymore, and I see this stuff ad infinitum all day online, and it just exhausts me. It's like, what's the line I can walk where it's organic, but doing it in a way that doesn't only serve a small niche that does disservice to the artist?
Fair enough. Just, as far as the promotions thing goes, I mean, I identify with you about the not wanting to put it in your friends' faces, but because we're DJs and we're in this scene, and most of our friends are in the same scene of the people that we're trying to promote to, and, you know, and so on and so forth. So what do you do? So someone asked me a question at some point in time, because I was talking to them about it. I was like, oh, this just really fucks me up. It's like, I have to do this, but I hate it, but I have to do it, but I hate it. And they said, well,
tedious.
You know, what do your friends do? And they say, well, they put their stuff out there. I'm like, well, how do they do it? Well, I just put it out there, and they put it out where they're smarmy, like, hey, check out my new music.
They put it online, then they do a Facebook post, and then a Twitter post, and that's it.
But No, but it was the guy was getting at something different. He was saying,
Oh, okay, sorry.
yeah, he was saying he wasn't from the scene. You know what I mean? I was talking to him outside of it, and he didn't know anything about it. So he asked me, he was like, well, what do your friends do? And I said, well, they just put it out there, and you know, they just do their smarmy thing, and you know, they just fire hose it out so as many people can see it as possible, and
Yeah.
Bob's your uncle. And he
Yeah.
said, okay, well, how do you think they feel when they do that? How do they think you think about it when
Oh, I know.
you see their promotions? How do they think about you thinking about it? I was like, that's an odd thing to say. He's like, well, what do you think he thinks you are thinking? And I'm like, I think he thinks I'm thinking that this dude's just doing his promotions and I do or do not fucking care. He's like,
Yeah,
why
yeah.
don't you think that way? I'm like,
Yeah, it goes back to that kind
I
of
don't know.
self-awareness, that self-awareness, vibe that I was talking about
Yeah.
earlier. And the ways to promote are always changing, and
Oh,
it's
yeah.
almost exhausting in a way.
speaking of promotions, two things. One, you have a 12-song compilation coming out with somebody.
Yes, that.
What is that?
That's
what are you
actually
doing?
that release that just came out last week that I was talking about earlier. The one that's on Misplaced Recordings.
Ah, okay.
Yeah, so that one, that's with a bunch of producers. That's with a British label called Misplaced, and they're doing pretty good right now. There's a few artists on the label like Mark Bronner, who's got some stuff on like Shall Not Fade and like some really bigger labels. Adrian Francis, who has put some stuff out on a bunch of different lo-fi labels, who I rate and have supported over the years. I'm actually gonna, in my mix of a little while, I'm actually gonna play a couple tracks from that compilation.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, so there's this one guy, and there's a few people on there who have like 10 to 15,000 followers, on SoundCloud. So I have 1,000, so I'm kind of in the middle, kind of lower area.
Right.
But then there's a woman, Itari, who's on there, who it's her first release. And then there's another kid named Transboy from New York. It's his first release as well, and he had the track from that compilation premiered on House'em, which is probably the biggest house music YouTube promo channel right now.
Yeah.
So if you have a track on House'em, you're probably going to get 50 to 100,000 plays overnight.
Oh, no
so
kidding.
that they do pretty good. Like
Better
they're-
write that down.
They're very selective too. Like he has a very certain vibe that he goes for. So actually, the Transboy track I'm probably going to play. It's my favorite track from the compilation, so I'm probably going to play that in my set. But there's a couple. When I looked at Misplaced kind of back catalog, there's a few other artists like Tom Vernon. There's a few other artists who I've linked and engaged with on some of the house music Facebook groups I engage with. And so it was a label that was kind of just very slightly above my level, that I knew could help me out a little bit and that I could help them out with like kind of like my audience, but not something that's like Lobster Theremin that's like so far out of my league that it's like, he's, Jim Asquith, great guy, runs Lobster Theremin. He's not going to listen to my demos. He's an artist who like reaches out to very select people. Although I got to give it to Pete Devno, he got some releases on Lobster Theremin last year.
Oh, yeah?
With a EP that he did with Tim Reaper. And Tim Reaper's probably one of the most well-known jungle, like old school jungle aim and break type producers.
Right.
And they've worked on tracks together, and Pete got a couple of tracks signed on Lobster Theremin. So that was probably one of the most prolific releases to come out of Boston last year, to be honest with you, outside of Steve Darko on Dirty Bird, another one.
Right on.
So we've got some really good talent in Boston, and I always like to put some shine on all of them. And even though I don't have the blog anymore, I still do a best of artist mix at the end of every year that Vanuland picks up.
Yeah.
And then I've got the playlist and then some other things too, because we've got a lot. We've got Saucy Lady, we've got Lightfoot, we've got Yuki, Saucy Lady's husband, Steve Darko. There's a lot of people making noise in Boston.
Thank you for coming on the show today.
Daniel, I appreciate it. That was
been a good time.
it was a lot of fun.
It's been like, what, a year?
It's been a while. I love to ramble about this stuff all day too. Like,
I love listening to you ramble
I could
about
go
it.
for 3 hours about this stuff. It's,
I think that's the sound of Jonathan melting down into a small puddle when you said 3 hours.
But yeah, I appreciate it, Daniel.
You
Thank
bet.
you for having
Thank you
me
for
on,
coming on the
man.
show.
Yeah.
Thank you.